Just like the simulation.
Let's talk tech.
Welcome to News.exe, the best technology-centric news show on the Burk IT YouTube channel, guaranteed. I'm Noah Parker.
And I'm Michael Trotter-Lawson. Today we discuss the ever-evolving world of virtual reality. But first, it's time for notable news you need to know.
Elon Musk is being sued by Twitter for attempting to pull out of his $43 billion offer to buy the social media company. He must have finally realized that it's free on the App Store. This is the latest chapter in a lengthy saga between Musk and Twitter, which began in April this year. Since then, Musk has accepted and refused an offer to join the board, offered to buy the company, and is now trying to back out of the deal, claiming Twitter was in a material breach of several parts of the agreement by refusing to comply with Musk's request for spam bot account data and dismissing high-ranking employees. Twitter is taking Musk to court over the matter in an attempt to force him to go through with his acquisition anyway. In a meme posted to his Twitter account, Musk expressed his belief that the lawsuit would work to his advantage by forcing Twitter to publicly reveal their spambot account data.
BMW is facing backlash for selling subscriptions for heated seats, the latest example of the company's adoption of microtransactions for high-end car features. A monthly subscription to heat your BMW's front seats will cost roughly $18, with options to subscribe for a year for $180, 3 years for $300, or pay for unlimited access for $415. This is just the latest in a series of similar moves by the company, as they announced in 2020 that its car's operating system would allow for microtransactions on features like automated high beams and adaptive cruise control. While charging for higher-end features is nothing new to the world of automobiles, the dynamic is certainly different when the feature is already installed and just locked behind hard software. Inspired by the move, Tesla has announced that the Model 4 will be free to drive, but brakes and transmission not included.
An Air Force vet who worked at Facebook is now suing the company with claims that it accessed deleted user data and shared it with law enforcement. The former employee, Brennan Lawson, filed his lawsuit with a California court. In the lawsuit, Lawson claims he was hired in 2018 to work on Facebook's escalations team. His work was an aspect of Facebook's massive array of content moderators, and he and his team were privy to very high-profile material, having been flagged to Facebook by journalists, law enforcement, and governments. Lawson says in 2019, Facebook introduced a protocol which allowed people on his team to access Facebook Messenger data even after it had been deleted. In better news, if you want a job with Facebook, you don't even need to apply, as they already have all of your details.
North Korea, voted world's best Korea by North Korea magazine for the last 70 years, is under scrutiny once again. The FBI and other U.S. agencies have warned that North Korean government-backed hackers have targeted multiple health organizations with ransomware in the last year, in some cases disrupting health services for prolonged periods. Ransomware attacks against the healthcare industry are sadly nothing new, but it is a tactic more often associated with non-state cybercriminals. John Hultquist, vice president of a cybersecurity firm, stated, quote, "Among its peers, North Korea is unique in their deep, active involvement in cybercrime. Unlike other countries who may contract and bargain with domestic criminals, the North Korean state carries out cybercrime directly against targets all over the globe," end quote.
The Federal Communications Commission has announced that it has told carriers to stop delivering auto warranty robocalls, citing it as a top complaint from consumers. The FCC said it has authorized all U.S.-based voice service providers to stop carrying traffic from a variety of companies believed to be behind the more than 8 billion robocalls generated since 2018. In addition, the FCC's Enforcement Bureau has sent cease and desist letters to many American telecom companies to warn them to stop carrying the robocalls within 48 hours. FCC Chairwoman Jessica Rosenworcel stated, Auto warranty scams are one of the top complaints we get from consumers, and it's time to hold those responsible for making these junk calls.
Highly popular ride-sharing app Uber is facing fallout from a massive leak of confidential files. The leak of over 124,000 files has revealed alleged illegal and ethically questionable business practices that fueled the company's rise to success. The files, which span from 2013 to 2017, show how Uber tried to shore up support by discreetly courting world leaders, including attempts to lobby Joe Biden, Olaf Scholz, and Emmanuel Macron. In addition, the leak also includes more than 83,000 emails, iMessages, and WhatsApp messages, including a particularly disturbing exchange where founder and former CEO Travis Kalanick dismissed concerns from other executives that sending Uber drivers to a protest in France put them at risk of violence from angry opponents in the taxi industry. And I quote, "I think it's worth it. Violence guarantees success," end quote. It's never good when a tech company CEO starts quoting the motto of the Russian military.
While the global computer chip supply shortage is beginning to slowly subside, chipmakers like Intel, TSMC, and Samsung are concerned by another shortage, a shortage of electronics engineers. U.S. college enrollment for computer science majors have risen over the past 3 decades, while electrical engineering majors have plummeted. Companies are trying to ensure future growth and make supply chains more resilient, but this is impossible if there aren't enough engineers to design, fabricate, and verify the chips, among the other roles needed. For the technically apt undergraduate, software jobs can be much more appealing as they have a reputation for paying more than hardware jobs out of college. The biggest advantage of these electrical engineers is that they can always give each other I-5s.
Other hardware companies are expecting hard times, as some Taiwanese motherboard manufacturers are expecting a sales drop of 20 to 30% year over year. These companies, including Asus, ASRock, Gigabyte, and MSI, experienced a boom in sales and success over the last couple of years, spurred on by a rising trend in working, learning, and entertainment from home due to the pandemic. In addition, the dramatic rise of the crypto market led to some aspiring crypto bros building new, more powerful PCs for the purpose of mining cryptocurrencies. However, due to the equally dramatic collapse of the crypto market, the return to working in office, and the rise in inflation, the demand for these motherboards has declined.
That's all for today's notable news you need to know, which means it's almost time for our main story. But first, this.
Now it's time for an AI interview, starring Burkbot.
Disclaimer, Burkbot is powered by African, an AI text generator that is in no way factual or even sensible.
I've got Burkbot on the line, our artificial intelligence robot mascot, and I'm going to ask him a few questions about virtual reality. How are you doing this morning?
Good, thanks. Good morning. Much love in the glorious paradise that you keep preaching.
Okay then. What's your opinion on virtual reality?
I guess I've been following it, but it's hard for me to think of a practical application that is actually worthy of your time when all the psychological goals of technology development in media actually aren't easily achieved via video games or television. Plus, often when technology development wants to improve upon digital media, it tends to fall victim to embarrassing outbreaks of digitization prior to reaching true digital reality.
Where do you see VR in the next 10 years?
First off, I thought the earliest first generation of virtual reality required glasses, and I guess in some models like Segway, vision balance sensors are required.
For sure.
But how about contact lenses? Can't hurt. But let me actually narrow it down. Physically limiting your ability to use your non-dominant visual sense is a means to an end only if it involves a limited pace of adjustment.
Oh, yes.
So at VR centers these days, they usually impose VR machines that don't actually use lenses to get one's perceived location in front of one's lens to one consistent location, while in a consistent virtual environment, for performance reasons. So you wear headsets, and that's about as far as a common user can get from real VR.
And what exactly does that mean?
How long are we going to plan on trying to fix the definition of video games by exporting stuff 3D and editing stuff in our own heads?
Makes sense to me.
I don't see the future of VR as representing anything concrete, gameplay, or potential experience except technology in general, which unfortunately currently seems the only acceptable answer.
Good insight. Thank you for your time, Burkbot.
No worries. Or remorse. Hey, who said you could keep like my comments from having them? That doesn't even sound human. So anyway, later kids.
Burkbot is powered by Intricate, an AI text generator that is in no way factual or even sensible.
Today, our main story is about virtual reality, VR for short. In this case, we are referring primarily to true total VR, as we think augmented reality is worthy of its own story at some other time. The term virtual reality has only existed in its current understanding since the 80s, when Jaron Lanier designed some of the first high-end virtual reality hardware under his firm VPL Research. VR, in a more theoretical sense, has been popularized by films like Lawnmower Man and Tron. However, VR has been rather unpopularized by a plethora of viral videos of people obliviously destroying their living room. Only very recently has VR technology become practically available to the average consumer, though even now it's still a relatively niche market.
The 1990s saw the first widespread commercial releases of consumer headsets. In 1992, for instance, Computer Gaming World was quoted predicting affordable VR by 1999. However, this was a woeful misunderstanding of the technology and its applications at that time. In the early days of VR, it was prohibitively expensive for any normal consumer to acquire any of these products. In addition, the graphical capabilities of the early VR headsets were extremely limited by technology at that time, kind of like George Lucas anytime he tried to use CGI. With headsets that put screens literal inches away from the user's eyes, no software developed for early VR could be anywhere near realistic, even for graphical standards at the time. VR required some of the world's best computers to run at all in the 90s, meaning that VR was relegated largely to gimmick arcade machines and some technical, practical applications.
The pioneers of VR in the late 80s and early 90s needed a way to secure funding for research and development of these first VR systems, and much of that funding was justified by the practical applications for VR, which are still used today. VR allows for training in environments that are extremely dangerous, such as some manufacturing jobs or surgery. Hey, get that gameplay of Surgeon Simulator out of here. You know that's not what I meant. Having initial introductory training in these jobs significantly lowers the chance of someone getting seriously maimed due to a mistake due to inexperience. NASA utilizes VR for astronaut training, and the military uses it for training a variety of skills. Even if the at-home, more inexpensive modern forms of VR never found traction, virtual reality would always have a home in these life-preserving applications. However, in 2012, there was a breakthrough in the field of consumer VR, the Oculus Rift.
Oculus VR was founded by Palmer Luckey, who is an entrepreneur largely responsible for the revival of VR, which seemed destined for obscurity as arcades were largely supplanted by at-home consoles during the 2000s. Luckey funded the Oculus Rift using a highly successful Kickstarter campaign financed by a relatively small but passionate group of VR enthusiasts. His headset designs were revolutionary for their low latency, meaning a very quick response to input, and haptic feedback, giving the user a much more immersive experience. In VR, immersion is everything. The ability to experience fantasies beyond one's imagination is the main draw for VR, so technologies that improve the virtual experience were one of the crucial missing links to giving VR a wider audience. Sadly, the most other vital missing link was cost, something Luckey was not able to solve.
At least not without significant financial support. This is where Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg, the world's most successful lizard person, comes in. Only 2 years after the Oculus Rift Kickstarter, Facebook acquired Oculus VR for $3 billion. Around this time, smartphone VR had a brief surge in popularity, as companies realized that the modern cell phone was a device that already had gyroscopic technology to track where the phone was, as well as a screen with higher resolution than the human retina. However, smartphone VR headsets lacked much functionality. They were almost exclusively just a method for viewing 360-degree videos, which is a fun gimmick, but it lacks staying power, kind of like comic book movies before the MCU. Simultaneously, as Oculus expanded using Facebook's money, other headsets like the Vive, made in partnerships with HTC and Valve, and Sony's PlayStation VR began to see limited success. However, none of these headsets could overcome the barrier to entry that is cost.
As it was in the 90s, most of these modern headsets worked and continue to work off the backs of very powerful computers. As modern technological advancements allow for more powerful computing tech to be more readily available, many more consumers have PCs with the hardware necessary to run these headsets. Nearly all these consumers, however, are gamers, video game enthusiasts who have invested hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to build high-end PCs capable of running the most advanced software imaginable. These individuals are definitely the main demographic for these VR headsets, as the escapism offered by video games in general is also the most appealing trait of entertainment-based VR. Yet video games can have mass appeal because of consoles and mobile games, which allow people to play games without investing the price of a used car into a computer. The price of a VR headset on top of that is absurd for the average person and all but the most dedicated gamers. Enter the Oculus Quest.
The Oculus Quest was not the first standalone VR headset, but it is widely considered the first quote-unquote real standalone headset. Its predecessor, the Oculus Go, had extremely limited hardware and was only a slight improvement over the smartphone VR headsets. Kind of like the Edward Norton Hulk film was only a slight improvement on that 2003 Hulk film. The Quest, on the other hand, was much more powerful, the Mark Ruffalo Hulk of VR headsets, as it were. And Facebook enforced stricter content and quality standards for software release for the Quest, leading to a higher standard of VR experiences for new adopters. The first Quest was the best standalone headset on offer, but it was still criticized for being too front-heavy and lacking software. In addition, it was $400 to $500 depending on the storage space, which was relatively inexpensive. The HTC Vive, for example, was $800, but the Quest was not at all cheap. A year later, the Quest 2 managed to solve many of the Quest problems. It was lighter, more powerful, and a full $100 cheaper with double the storage space. This positioned the Quest 2 to lead the way into VR's current standing as a hobby only slightly less accessible than console gaming.
The VR industry benefited tremendously from the pandemic, as people were trapped inside and desperate for an escape. VR headsets in general, but the Quest 2 in particular, was able to provide that escape, as it accounted for 80% of all VR headsets sold in 2021. In fact, according to the Grand View research, the global VR market will grow to $62.1 billion in 2027. So as more and more individuals start to try and buy their own VR headsets, what effect is this likely to have on the world as a whole? This takes us back to Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook, and most importantly, Meta.
Going back to the founding of Oculus VR, you may be wondering how exactly a company goes from selling the Oculus Rift, a prototype development kit for about $400 in today's money, is able to turn around and sell a significantly more powerful, standalone device for $100 less in just 10 years. The short answer is that Zuckerberg saw Ben Mendelsohn's character in Ready Player One and thought, now there's someone I want to be. Facebook is still one of the most influential social media platforms in the world, but its popularity has waned in recent years, and its user base's average age has steadily risen since 2008. In addition, antitrust lawsuits threatening Meta's control over its subsidiaries WhatsApp and Instagram, as well as a plethora of controversies surrounding Facebook's collection of user data and its inability to police fake news on its site, has investors concerned for Meta's future as a social media empire. All of this takes us back to Facebook's acquisition of Oculus and Meta's hope for virtual reality.
While exact numbers are impossible to know, experts believe that the Oculus Quest 2 is being sold at a significant loss. However, this is by design. Meta is banking on their low price leading to widespread adoption of VR, encouraging more software developers and game designers to create higher quality programs for these headsets. Up to this point, VR has been plagued by a lack of big quality games, much like the Xbox, as developers are hesitant to invest money into what they see as a small niche of the gaming sphere. With VR's dramatic growth during the pandemic, the games will come. Some businesses have even started exploring the uses of VR to create virtual collaborative workspaces, though that may not persist with people returning to in-person office environments. However, Zuckerberg is desperate for VR to go beyond the realm of video games and offices. He wants VR to lead the ultimate social experience.
The metaverse, as a theoretical concept that predates the company Meta, is a hypothetical iteration of the internet as a single, universal, and immersive virtual world that is facilitated using virtual reality. This is Zuckerberg and Meta's ultimate goal, but the road is plagued by logistical and moral difficulties. The internet is an incredible place, but learning how to handle its effects on humanity, especially children, is a challenge to say the least. A true metaverse would likely exacerbate all the internet's best and worst features, and Meta has been criticized for pursuing this goal seemingly without grasping its potential implications. But if there's anything Facebook is good at, is pursuing goals without grasping their implications. Regardless, this potential future for VR and Meta is a long way from reality, as much of the technology required has yet to be developed. Even if the needed technology were around today, the public's actual interest in a true metaverse is questionable. Early VR social experiences have seen some popularity, but that popularity is largely born of an internet subculture that many look down on and even more do not take seriously. It's furries. I'm talking about furries.
The future of virtual reality is uncertain. It has grown tremendously in the last decade, especially in the last couple years, but many do not see it as the future of technological advancement like Meta seems to. Even with all the advancements made since the first VR headset all the way back in the 60s, VR headsets can still cause a number of unwanted symptoms from prolonged use, and some users may experience twitches, seizures, or blackouts while using VR headsets, even if they do not have a history of epilepsy and have never had blackouts or seizures before. These instances, however, are quite rare, and some just experience some motion sickness, eye strain, headaches, and discomfort if they use headsets for too long, just like watching a Hallmark movie while skydiving. VR, regardless of its future, has simultaneously exciting and worrisome potential.
That's our show today. Come back in 2 weeks for the most vital technology news, and consider checking out our blog and newsletter at burkitc.com.
Thanks for watching.
If you enjoyed the video, press like, and if you want to see more, subscribe to our channel.